Hi, I'm Dustin Abbott, and I'm here today to give you my standard review of the new Canon RF 85mm f2 macro IS STM lens. Now, I'm currently filming on it on the Canon EOS R5, and so you can get a sense of how it's tracking my face during the segment, and also a little bit of an idea of how the video footage is. Now, this is the standard review, so we're going to, move through things a little bit more quickly. If you want all of the details, I recommend that you check out the definitive review instead, and it takes things a little bit more in detail, gives you a little bit more information. So today we're going to start off by talking about the build and the design, what you're actually getting for your money here, which in this case in the US market is right under $600 US. And so it's a moderately priced lens and it's a moderately sized lens. It comes in at about 500 grams in weight. And so but it does have a bit of a feel of density to it because it is not a particularly long lens. And so it's fairly stubby for the amount of density that's there. We've got a 67mm front filter thread up front, and the lens, it feels substantial in the hand. Now, part of why it's not as long as what some competing macro lenses might be is that this is not an internally focusing lens, and so that means that it is a front focusing lens, and when you focus down towards macro, it will extend, the front inner barrel will extend out about 3 centimeters in total of maximum extension. Now, in this case, you do have, as the initials suggest, you have an image stabilization system, so that does contribute a little bit to the weight, and also has the ability to achieve, a near macro type performance, as opposed to the 0.13 times, which is a very low magnification level that we saw on the EF lens. Overall, however, the upside here is that does allow the lens to be quite compact for storage and for transporting, and so I think that a lot of people will enjoy, that attribute of it. It's an easy lens to bring along. Now, it does also have 3 switches on the side of the barrel. And those are, first of all, a focus limiter, which you're going to want to use when we talk about autofocus, because it's not the fastest lens to autofocus. And so if you kind of restrict the focus throw area to the kind of photography that you're doing, it may help you to achieve a little bit more focus speed and also eliminate some hunting along the way and allow more confident focus. And so utilize that. There's also, the basic AF/MF switch and also an on and off for the image stabilization system. Outside that, there's not a whole lot to report. There is no weather sealing. The casing is the kind of standard that we have seen from a lot of these RF lenses. I do really like the finish. It's kind of a almost matte type finish, but it's slightly flocked. It's very resistant to fingerprints and marking. It's something that's going to hold up well for a long time, from what I can tell. And so, I think that the build quality is fine. What frustrates me about any non-L series lens is that you do not get a lens hood included, and so your Canon wants to charge you an additional $50 for that. And also, there's never going to be weather sealing, at least to this point, in any of their non-L series lenses, which was fine back in the day when nobody did that. But these days in the current market, you have lenses that cost half the price of this lens, that come with a lens hood and have weather sealing. The market has changed, and I think that Canon needs to change with it, with a recognition that what once was acceptable is no longer acceptable here at this point. So as I mentioned, it does have an image stabilization system, and it is rated for up to 5 stops, at standard operating distance. And then if you look at the fine print, up to 3 stops for close-up macro type work. And they call this their hybrid IS, because up close it does, help to compensate for the unique kinds of movements that are inherent to macro focus. So I found that this is, I think, about correct as far as the rating goes. I wasn't able to achieve really low shutter speeds when doing macro type work, but I was able to get about 5 stops, from a distance of about 2 meters away. Now in this case, I was reviewing and testing it on the R5, which does have in-body image stabilization. You can't turn one system off. They have to work together. They don't work independently. And so, I can't tell you exactly what was providing what. What I can say is that I don't feel like the combination of the two systems is going to provide you a lot more than the 5 rating. You might get up to 6, but I don't feel like this is the kind of lens that you're going to be able to handhold at extremely low settings. And again, your mileage may vary when it comes to that. It has a lot to do with how steady you are and, you know, the conditions that you're shooting in. So it's certainly a very welcome thing to have. Having image stabilization does allow you to achieve handheld macro results as long as you don't try to do them at ridiculously low shutter speeds. But, you know, for example, this shot at 1/40th of a second, no problem. I got a nice stable end result from it. It also has an STM, or a stepping motor. That doesn't mean a whole lot these days, as I find that there is a huge amount of variation in the quality of the focus performance in STM motors these days, which are quite common on mirrorless lenses. In this case, this is my least favorite aspect of the lens design here. The focus motor is somewhat slow, it is somewhat noisy, and I also find it tends to balk on me. As you can see from this video clip here, this is testing this AF servo, not for video, but for stills work. And you're going to be able to see that and hear that there's definitely some noise as it focuses back and forth. The other thing you may be able to pick up on that is that towards the end of the segment, I removed the foreground object, the target that I was having the lens focus on, and so it should have then focused towards infinity once again, and you'll notice that it didn't focus. And I found that to be a bit of a problem, that sometimes the lens focus would just be bulky, and rather than focusing on a foreground object, it would just stay stuck in the background, or vice versa. It was a little bit frustrating in a variety of situations, and also, since manual focus is focused by wire, which means it's got to be routed through the focus motor, there's a fair bit of noise involved with manual focus, and it takes forever to get between the two extremes. I tried going from minimum focus distance to infinity, and I counted, it took me 21 rotations of my wrist to go throughout that full focus throw range, which is frankly ridiculous. And that's, you know, supposed to allow you some precision, but in many cases it feels like you're making rotations that achieve absolutely nothing. And so in a variety of areas, the manual or the autofocus caused me some frustration. That's going to be true also for video. We'll take a look at video focus pulls and draw some conclusions from that. So as you can see, there still is some noise, but what I see Canon has done is that they've seriously detuned focus speed in that kind of setting for video. And so what it ends up doing instead is that it just takes forever to get from point A to point B if you're doing a focus pull, and they've slowed things down and so that there's less noise involved. Now that's fine for what I'm doing right now, in that there is not a whole lot of movement there. And so, you know, those little tiny focus changes being made, I think they're fairly quiet. I doubt that the mic is picking up too much. But if you're making some kind of focus pull, it becomes almost unusable. And in fact, it was unusable I was trying to film a little commercial type segment and wanted to do a shot where I was focusing up close, which should be a strength for the lens, moving the foreground object away to reveal something in the background that the lens would then pull focus to. But the focus pull was so slow, and it was so frustrating just trying to get it to focus on my foreground object that I ended up giving up and did the shot with a different lens. And so in many ways, I was frustrated by autofocus. Fortunately, I wasn't frustrated at all by the image quality, and there's a lot of great stuff here for the image quality. There is what I would call a moderate amount of vignette. It's getting close to three stops in the corner, and that's kind of been a Canon RF thing so far. I have found that a lot of the lenses are a little bit on the heavy side on vignette. It's like Canon has elected that that's going to be the thing that they leave a little bit less corrected. I've seen Zeiss do the same thing over the years, and you know it's hard to argue against Zeiss optics. So the good news here is it's linear, it corrects just fine. And as far as distortion goes, there is a tiny bit of pincushion distortion. I used about a -4 to correct for it. So nothing major there. Other aberrations are really well controlled. You know, for example, I didn't really see any lateral, not hardly any field, longitudinal chromatic aberrations. I think if you get really bright, shiny objects, you might see some longitudinal CA. I didn't really see it much though in my test, and so I felt like it was well corrected for that. I also found that from f2 on, I got really consistent results in terms of evenness of sharpness across the frame and very good wide open contrast. That good control of aberrations helps it to achieve good wide open contrast and a great deal of consistency across the frame, as you can see. In fact, stopping down to f2.8 really makes very little difference. At f4, I saw a bit of a contrast boost. At f5.6, a little bit sharper still. But overall, the image quality results are very good in terms of sharpness. And what's also very good is that it achieves very nice, soft bokeh quality that I was really pleased with. So that goes whether it's bright highlights like Christmas type lights, but into real world subjects as well, even though winter is not the best bokeh time of year. Despite that, I got just the look of the images really appealed to me. And part of what I do is it's not just the technical aspect of things, it's the feel to me as a photographer. And I liked images that came off of this particular lens. And so that's part of what frustrates me so much about the autofocus, is that I want to love this lens on paper. I want to love it because of its image quality, and that autofocus I think holds a very good lens back. But as far as the images themselves, I really like them. It did a good job of detecting eyes, for IAF. But these days, that's not saying a lot because cameras are so good at this. And, so in this case, I can't really give the lens a lot of credit because I think a lot of it goes to the camera body, camera system itself. But I got good results for portrait type work with the lens as well. And so at the end of the day, I think you can probably get a sense of where I'm coming at from this lens. I think that if you can live with not an amazing autofocus performance, maybe you don't do video, maybe you're not necessarily about speed as a part of it, I think you can get what you want out of the lens, and then you're going to love the images. But for some of you, the autofocus is going to be a deal breaker, I think. And so you're just going to have to make a determination where you fall on that spectrum. At the end of the day, however, this is a lens that in some ways lives up to its potential, and in other ways it does not. And I really wish that Canon had thrown their nano USM focus motor in this lens instead. I think I would be singing a much different tune right now if they had. I'm Dustin Abbott. If you look in the description down below, you can find linkage to my full text review, which is a good way to pick up some of the details maybe you still have questions about. Beyond that, there's also linkage there to an image gallery. You can check out photos at your leisure. There's also linkage there if you would like to purchase one for yourself or to follow me on social media, become a patron, sign up for my newsletter that comes out every Thursday. And of course, if you haven't already, please click that subscribe button right here on YouTube. Make sure you click the notification to get notifications when new content drops. And of course, thanks for watching. Have a great day. Let the light in.